Hello and welcome to the Sister Mentors podcast. Sister Mentors has been nurturing the next generation of women of color leaders for 25 years. Our work centers around the needs and dreams of women and girls of color in the face of deep-seated institutional inequities found in the educational system. The lives of over 100 women and girls of color have been changed by Sister Mentors. These women and girls have evolved in astounding ways, and with the help of Sister Mentors, they are on their way to earning higher education degrees, particularly PhDs. On this podcast, I will speak to some of the mentors and mentees about their lives and educational journeys. These women and girls will tell their moving stories of who they are, where they come from, and how Sister Mentors was instrumental in keeping them on their educational paths. In this episode, we meet Cindy Ayala. At first, Cindy had some difficulties navigating her educational journey. Her path to her college major and eventually her current career was not a direct one. Cindy then made the decision to look deep inside herself to figure out who she was and what she was made of. And luckily, she had Sister Mentors there to support her along the way. I am your host, Kahmeela Adams. Thanks for joining me as we celebrate the bold past and fierce future of Sister Mentors here on the Sister Mentors podcast. Hello, Cindy Ayala. Welcome to the Sister Mentors podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be a part of this.
Oh, this is going to be great. Yeah, it's been really awesome for me to get to know a lot of you ladies, and you all have such fascinating stories. And let's find out what yours is. Where are your roots? Where do you come from? Let's talk about your family.
Sure. So my roots, I was born here and raised in America, but my family are from El Salvador. So my parents came here to escape the war that was happening in El Salvador, and also they wanted to give their future children better opportunities than they would have in El Salvador. So growing up, my parents would always tell me that some of their experiences too, that they said, some of the degrees that they might have in El Salvador doesn't transfer well to other places. But having a degree from the U.S. is a big deal that could offer you better opportunities from to other countries was what they've told me growing up. They didn't have the same opportunities as I have here in terms of education. But yes, they always emphasize trying to provide more opportunities for me and my siblings.
When they got over here, how did they go about learning the language, learning English?
So my dad, I remember when I was a kid, he would take me sometimes to his English class. He would do a night class. He was a little bit later. He learned English a little bit later, but he knows enough to get by for his job and, any everyday activities. My mom, I remember her telling me growing up that she didn't always drive or had a car at the time, but she told me when she was riding the bus sometimes that she had a notebook and was studying English constantly. I believe she took classes. Now she's basically fluent in English. You would never think. I've heard one of my neighbors told me, wow, your mom has really great English. You would think she was born and raised in the U.S. with how fluent her English is. Of course, she gets some terms mixed up, words, grammar, but I think even the native English speakers get those confused too. So
right, it is kind of tricky. Where did your family move?
So my family, they kind of lived. I'm trying to remember the exact time, but from El Salvador. I know my dad for sure. He spent some time in New York. Okay. He worked in New York and lived in there for a little bit, and then I believe with my mom, she had family here in Alexandria already. There's a huge El Salvadorian population here in Alexandria. There's actually an area called Chirilagua, which is named after a city in El Salvador.
Oh, okay.
So yes, big Salvadorian population here. They lived in Arlington sometime before, for a little bit, and then they moved to Alexandria when I was about 3 years old, I believe. But they've lived here since over 30 years now in Alexandria, because this is where I grew up. I was raised here. My siblings were born and raised here in Alexandria too.
And you still live there?
I still live in Alexandria. I like the city.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. Have you ever had a chance to go back to El Salvador?
A few times. I remember going when I was, I believe, 15. I remember being a teenager in El Salvador. And then once I remember being 19, 20 years old going to El Salvador. And the difference is so huge. It's a beautiful country, but there's such a huge difference of lifestyle compared to here. I identify more Americanized than just because of my way of thinking. There is this term called machismo, which is in Spanish that it's kind of like a more, I'm trying to think of how to define it, like aggressive masculinity, which is very problematic for both men and women. Well, I was sort of the trial run growing up since I was the eldest. They didn't know a lot of things since the school system is so different here as opposed to El Salvador. The expectations, doing parent-teacher conferences.
Right.
I remember my dad and my mom sitting there for a seventh, I believe it was middle school, 7th grade, for a parents-teachers conference. It was a class I was struggling in. I believe it was either math or science, but I remember my dad would pretend to do fisticuffs at me just as a joke. It's like, Cindy, you need to try harder. So I was like, I'm sorry, Dad. I'm trying.
So, how old were you when you joined Sister Mentors? How did you find them, and what made you decide you wanted to join?
So I was at 7th grade and 12 years old when I first joined Sister Mentors. I found out about Sister Mentors because I was originally part of this after-school program called Project Step Out. It was an after-school program targeted towards middle school girls. The woman who ran the program, Miss Stafford, thought that I, along with a lot of the other girls in the program, she thought we would be a good fit for Sister Mentors, especially because my parents, they knew one day that they wanted me to go to college, but they don't know how to get me to that point. They're just like, we want you to go, but it's so new to them. Transferring over to Sister Mentors, I had no idea how impactful it would be at that point in time, how important it was and beneficial it was for me to this day. So I remember we were assigned having a mentor and then doing the mentoring sessions once a month. We discuss goals, progress in our classes, what are we struggling with, or what are we excelling with, what do we want to do when we get older. And I found that to be very beneficial for me, because it's important you don't think about your goals, and how we're going to achieve them. But also, too, I remember some of the other programs that Sister Mentors have done. For example, the social skills and now called leadership workshop. It used to be called the social skills and etiquette workshop. It's led by Miss Fanny Allen every year. So we would go once a year to this really nice hotel called the Jefferson Hotel. I would get all excited, dressed up. We're going to a 5-star hotel. So it's like, oh, it's going to be fancy. They have a courier. People were holding the door for me. I thought that was great. And having a 4-course meal. But it was so much more than that. I mean, it was important to know, you never know what kind of occasion you're going to run into. And then the public speaking was very important too, because how do you stand at the podium? I remember she would discuss how do you stand at the podium, stand up straight. You can slightly bend your knee, but not too much where you're like look too relaxed. I remember she talked about crossing your arms. It looks defensive and unsure. So you want to relax your arms to your side, how do you how do you place your hands onto the podium? You could place it in front of you or grip it to the sides. And it was a safe place to practice your public speaking because you're among your peers. Everyone else is on the same boat as you. Right. And also, how do you shake hands with somebody else? She always emphasized, make sure you do a nice, firm handshake, no noodly arms. You don't want to do a soft handshake. And now how do you hand a gift to somebody while shaking their hand? The placement is very important as well. So... Wow. But in how do you leave a voicemail or discuss on the phone? And those are tips I use to my day-to-day life because I make phone calls every day at my job. I leave voicemails at my job, and this helped me so much. And you don't think about it until you see someone else try to do it.
Wow, that's something I guess that is not uncommon in this next generation coming up.
Yes, and that's what I was thinking too. Like they're so used to texting that it just texting an email. But a lot of the clients at my job, they strictly use their phones, and they don't even check voicemail or text message.
So, do you recall one of your first college trips that you took with Sister Mentors?
So my first college trip, I believe I've been on so many. I remember the first one is the University of Maryland, I believe. I know Dr. Lewis has mentioned from time to time, I still have that picture of you in front on the campus. And there are so many college trips that are very memorable. I remember enjoying the campus, the aesthetic of Duke University. I enjoyed visiting Wellesley's College, which is an all-women's college. We felt very welcomed there. And then the other one, too, the highlight was when we went to Princeton University. We got to meet Dr. Cornel West. This was also my cousin's Jessica's very first college trip. I remember when she heard that we were going to Princeton, she was like, "Can I please go? I want to go. It's one of my dream schools." And she was like 10 or 11 around this time. I was like, oh, wow, she's already thinking about college at this age? Yeah. I wasn't thinking about college at her age. Good for her.
Right. And so, not even just thinking about it, but having a dream school to...
Yeah. And so it was really fun. And then in terms of college visits too, there was on the opposite side, this was more behind the scenes. I actually helped organize a college visit to my university at George Mason University.
Oh, really?
Yes. I was very proud of myself. I couldn't have done it without the help of one of my former mentors, Dr. Lenitra Berger. She's employed at the Honors College at that time. But I had the unique, I guess, not perspective, but position where I studied arts at the time. And I believe this was the first time ever that a lot of the girls had visited an art class for a college visit. So I remember organizing with a bunch of professors for the girls to visit different art classes. I remember when I had to pick up one of the girls from a studio class, that one of the students gave them supplies to sit down and draw. And there you see the professor in the middle kind of just sitting in a chair, but you could see them drawing the professor on it. And then George Mason University also has a game design department as well. So for one section, there was 2 game design students, both women, who had computers up for the girls to test out the different games that were made by students as well. Nice. Which I thought it was really unique.
That's so cool.
Yeah, I'm very proud of myself for that. It's tough work, and I couldn't have done it all by myself, but still I was like, yay, that's phew. It was hard.
Well, that's awesome. So I know you had like a kind of roundabout pathway to your in your college career. Like
yes.
You started off wanting to do one thing, ended up in a totally different thing. Let's talk about like how you got from point A to B to C.
Sure. So for the longest, ever since I wanted to be ever since I was a kid, I wanted to be a veterinarian. I love animals. I have a cat. He might have been screaming earlier in the background somewhere, demanding attention. But yeah, I remember for the longest I wanted to be a vet. But then when I hit my sophomore year or junior year, I remember taking in high school, I was taking biology. And then afterwards, when like the further I got, the more I realized like, oh, this isn't for me. I was struggling in the class. None of the material was sticking, and I was doing poorly. So, and it's just like, I know I'm going to be expected to take biology in the future, and this isn't vibing well with me. So I need to think of something else at some point. And then I remember one college visit we did was UVA, and I liked the campus. And during my high school career, I wasn't a very good student. I would say my average was, a C student. I was aiming high, aiming high. But I remember Dr. Lewis one time during a mentoring session, she pulled me aside. She said she spoke with the dean, and she said that my grades would, at that time, wasn't up to par for what they were looking for, and I wouldn't be able to get in at that time with my GPA. And I remember being devastated. I remember it was around senior year. And you hear a lot of talk at that time too from like other students. This is what I experienced, that there was a lot of stigma against going community college. And Dr. Lewis said the dean recommended I go to community college first and then transfer. But yeah, I remember being crushed. I was like, oh gosh, this is, there's a lot of shame surrounding community college at that time. I heard some students were saying that, oh, I wouldn't be caught dead at a community college, blah, 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 blah.
Wow.
But I thought, okay, I'm going to do what Dr. Lewis recommends because I value her advice. So she told me about a program called the Pathway Program, which has a special agreement with NOVA, or Northern Virginia Community College, that you get extra perks. So they gave me some grant money for being part of the program. Also, you get your own set of counselors. And then for transferring schools, there's a lower threshold for the GPA requirement. So I was like, okay, I'm going to have a fresh new start when I go to NOVA. I need to crack down and take everything seriously. So when I transferred, when I started NOVA, I was very anxious. It was a whole new environment. I didn't know anybody. it felt lonely at that time. I mean, eventually I knew some of my peers who also did the same thing I did. So I reconnected with them and it made the transition smoother. So I buckled down. I decided I'm just going to do my 2 years, take my core classes, and I began to thrive. My grades rose significantly. I was now a B student. Okay. And then I needed an additional class to kind of fill a requirement, and I started doing sign language for about a year. I thought, instead of a veterinarian, let me try being a sign language interpreter. And I did well for the first few semesters, but then the semester before I was looking to transfer schools, I hit a wall. And I was beginning to struggle a lot. I don't know how else to describe it other than hitting a wall. The material wasn't sticking with me. I was struggling understanding the teacher because the professor, he's deaf, so you can't speak to each other.
Okay.
I mean, that's how you best learn the language.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and so I was having a lot of thoughts. I was thinking, like, I did a lot of art growing up, but I never did any classes in middle school or high school. So I was thinking, it's like, okay, maybe when I transfer, I'll study art, because he pulled me aside and said, like, are you looking to be a sign language interpreter? I don't think it's a good fit for you. And I said, well, I was thinking about studying art anyway, so because I took that as my sign, like, okay, this is my sign that when I transfer, I'm gonna do art instead. So I just had met the threshold for the GPA, and the pathway program had an agreement with George Mason University that if you have a certain GPA, that you automatically get accepted. So,
okay.
Which I thought, I was like, yay, very excited.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, so I'm so glad I did the pathway program.
Right.
So I recommend it to any young girls who aren't sure. Like, even I knew people who did sign up as a backup plan.
Yeah.
It doesn't hurt. And then once I transferred, I did major in new media arts, and I began thriving. So, like, my GPA shot up even more. I was on the dean's list multiple times now, so I was so proud of myself for that.
That's amazing. So new media is what you found, and that's where you decided, like, right, this is it. This is where I want to be.
Yeah, I was hesitant at first because, I heard a lot of people say, oh, you can't make money in art. You're going to be a starving artist. And I was very worried. But I had nothing else left for me.
And when I got to make this work somehow.
I had to make it work somehow. And that's how I ended up at my current place in employment. So I made it work.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yes.
And you started there as an intern and then moved up.
Yes.
And just been with them for how many years?
I would say 5 or 6 now. I started at around October 2016 as an intern, and then became part-time January 2017, and then became full-time later, I think around the summer 2017.
That's awesome. Yes,
and I've been with them ever since. So, and I'm still with them to this day. So.
Yes, well done. So you weren't the only one that went through Sister Mentors. You invited your younger sister, Deanna,
yes,
to join the program?
Yes. So a couple years into the program, I remember asking Dr. Lewis if my sister can join. Deanna was around 10 years old when she first joined. I remember Dr. Lewis being a little hesitant at first because they always started with middle school girls. They've never thought about pursuing having elementary school girls join the program. So, she was like, how can we make this work? They weren't very sure, but there was other my peers in the program as well were asking for their younger sisters to join. So my friend Kades and my other friend Rahama, they both had younger sisters as well, that they wanted their sisters to join. So Dr. Lewis invited them in to join some of the program, and she thought, oh, okay, we should be targeting younger girls to join the program because this is very formative years. They're learning, good study habits, and, they can make things work that for girls around 10 years old and, girls in middle school and high schools, because they have their different parts of the journey as well. So, and I think too, around middle school, there's a lot of peer pressure surrounding it too, that the girls are more susceptible to. It was considered cool not to do your homework,
right?
Or act up in class and such. And I think too, they want to have the younger girls have confidence to ignore that. So, not just in middle school, but even younger, and learn good study habits, thinking about goals, not necessarily in the back of their mind talking about college, but right now they're focused on the now, because they still have the college is, one part of their end goal, but right now they're slowly preparing them as years to come for college. But, it's different stages of their life.
Yeah, definitely. Are you still connected with Sister Mentors? Yes,
I'm still connected with Sister Mentors. So I remember I invited a lot of my younger cousins to join Sister Mentors. And around that time, I was first volunteering my time. And then seeing how dedicated I was asked to be an intern for Sister Mentors, then the program assistant. And then once I graduated from Sister Mentors, that position went to another young woman in the program. But now I was asked to join the EduSeed Board of Directors, which is the umbrella nonprofit, and Sister Mentors is a program of EduSeed. So I'm part of the board of directors. I'm also part of the Sister Mentors alumni committee as well. So I'm very active with them.
And how does that, what is that like now? You're going from being on one side of the operation to now you're on the other, like helping to make decisions for what the organization is going to be.
So it was so interesting because being part of Sister Mentors, being in the program, you don't think about how it's run. And then being part of the board of directors, it was eye-opening how much work went into it. Like, I knew there was a lot of work, but, all the decisions, we have to vote on budgets. Are we all in agreement with how the budgets? We look at financials together. There's also these things called bylaws that we have to review and discuss as well. So it was very strange. I was like, oh my goodness, like this, I knew there was work, but this much work? My goodness. So, and then also too, it's a group effort because we all have to agree. And if someone doesn't agree with something, it's like, okay, what do you not agree with? How do we, or just like nothing like, it's like, oh, I disagree with this, blah, 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 nothing malicious.
Right.
It's a very positive board. Everyone on the board is very passionate about Sister Mentors, and they want the best for the girls and the women in the program as well. So we're just thinking about them when we meet up for our meetings, because that's the end goal, for them. So it it's just so interesting just to be behind the scenes. And also too for the alumni committee, it wasn't always around, but I think it's new because now we have the numbers, high enough numbers to have an alumni committee because so many women of college graduates, PhD graduates, now that now we have special events targeted towards the grads. And it's so important. It's a way to stay in touch with a lot of your peers that you grew up and interacted. So seeing the end of your journey, whether it's the college or when the women defended their dissertations and got their PhD awarded. But I highly encourage any of the women to participate in a lot or join the alumni committee as well. We have great events, the upcoming college reunion, college and alumni reunion coming up. It's so fun to catch up with a lot of the women to see where they're at, hear their new job. A lot of them work in government, or to even catch up with some of the younger girls. It's so crazy to see. I've seen some of the women now graduated in college I knew them when they were like 10 or so, and it's so crazy to see them grow up. It's like, oh my gosh, you just got your it's so taken back. It's like, oh my gosh, you've grown so much.
Wow, yeah. And it's gotta be like a really special, like, you all part of this real special tribe.
Yes.
Like this is, and it's such a great bonding experience
Definitely.
in itself. Like, outside of like all of the preparation that they're helping you with life and your education and all that business, it's also just like the bond, the sisterhood that happens within it. Like that's a beautiful thing, and that's not something that's easily found.
Definitely. I love the support that everyone provides each other because we're all on the same journey, but we experience different obstacles. But we can talk to somebody who has experienced those obstacles to see how we can go over those obstacles for we're like I remember being the only Latina in a lot of my classes, whether it was honors classes, AP classes, and in college too. It was very diverse, my campus, but a lot of the colleges, like the college classes I took, I was still the only Latina in my classes. I'm so used to it. But I hope that more Latinas would pursue, I think at least a creative path, because it's so rare. A lot of my peers, they pursued more medicine, whether they wanted to be a doctor, a nurse, pediatrician,
veterinarians.
Yeah. I mean, it's not bad. It's not bad, but a lot of them were being pressured by family. Their parents especially saying, well, you need to do this because you'll be well respected, even if it's not something they wanted to do. But, they're like, okay, well, they're my parents. I should listen. So. Right.
Mm-hmm. They can be very persuasive at times, parents.
Definitely. Especially if they're paying for it. So. Right.
Yeah. Which, it's, yeah. But, okay, so what is it you're doing now? What is your job now? And, like, how much do you love it?
So, so I am the studio assistant at my job. I work at Old Town Editions. It's a very unique place. It's a fine art print shop. So I remember when I first did my interview, I just thought, oh, it's going to be just like a Kinko's or a Staples or something. But it's not. It's very high end. They do a lot of excellent work. They work with a lot of museums, galleries. So they've done work for the Smithsonian, George Washington's, Mount Vernon. And it was so incredible for me to be part of the work now. It's like, yeah, I did that. Yay.
That's awesome.
I remember we did a exhibition. We did printing for an exhibition of for Billie Holiday. We do a little bit of everything. It's very small. There's only 4 of us. It's a very unique place because it's women owned and woman run, which is very rare in the print industry. So sometimes we get comments for men. It's like, where's all the men at? Well, women are like, it's like, wow, it's all woman owned and run. That's great.
Right.
If it was all men working, no one would bat an eye. They wouldn't say anything. So.
There wouldn't be like, oh, where's all the women at?
They wouldn't say anything. So, and sometimes, we have to deal with our own fair share of like, mansplaining. They think, I don't know how else to describe it.
It is what it is. Like you have described it. That's what it is. Well, thank you so much, Cindy. Like you've been a delight.
Thank you.
I have enjoyed your story, and thanks for taking us on this journey. And what was the name of the print?
So
the company you work for again?
It's called Old Town Editions, and we're located in Alexandria, Virginia. The business has been around for 20 years. I never knew it existed until I applied for the internship. So,
well, again, thank you so much, Cindy. Like this has been awesome, and you are a delight.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. This has been very exciting.
For more information on Sister Mentors, a project of EduSeed, please visit sistermentors.org. You can also find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn as Sister Mentors. Please subscribe, rate, and review the show wherever you get your podcasts, and don't be afraid to share. This podcast was produced by Rugged Angel Productions for Sister Mentors.